The following is a fan translation and a fan dubbing. All rights to ReZero belong to Tappy Negatsuchi. Please support the official release. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Oh no, this is really bad. He felt the hard floor against his cheek and realized that he had collapsed onto his face. His strength was completely gone, and he had already lost sensation in his fingers. The heat from his core was so excruciating it made him want to tear his throat out. Hot, 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 hot. The moment he opened his mouth to scream, what spilled forth was no shriek. It was a clump of blood. He vomited up large quantities of his lifeblood as he coughed. Frothy blood started foaming up at the corners of his mouth as he gurgled. Within his dim field view, the ground had been dyed red. This is all my blood. There's enough to soak a fallen body. Blood comprises about 8% of the human body, and it's said that losing about a third of it would be life-threatening. But it seemed to him that he'd already lost just about all of it. My stomach has been torn open. It was no wonder he felt so hot. It seemed his brain had confused pain for heat. He was almost torn in half. Only a bit of skin at his back held him together. In short, it seemed it was about checkmate for him. The moment he realized his consciousness started fading. Even the heat, which was making him writhe in agony, had disappeared. Even the unpleasant feeling of blood and the sensation in his hand he'd used to feel organs, it was all fading away, along with his consciousness. All that was left was his body, which would not be able to accompany his soul. This body used the last of its disappearing consciousness to move just a little. It turned its head upward. Black shoes formed ripples in the pool of blood before his eyes. There was someone there, and that someone was most likely the one who killed him. Strangely, he didn't feel like looking at their face. This person was the one who took his life, and yet he still decided to simply remain a spectator to his own demise. He had no clue who they were, but right now he didn't really care about that. He only wished for the girl's safety. Baru? He felt like he heard a voice, similar to the chime of a bell. He was beyond the point where he could even differentiate his sentences, so he probably just imagined it. Despite that, even supposing it wasn't real, he found it extremely comforting. A short scream, and then the carpet of blood welcomed yet another person. She had fallen right next to him, exactly where his arm was. Her fair hand dropped powerlessly and intertwined with his. Probably just a coincidence. He felt her fingers move slightly, as if squeezing his hand. He forced his disappearing consciousness to return for a moment. The pain, the heat, everything had faded away. It was meaningless. Nothing but a loser, wasting time. But even so, I will definitely save you. At that moment, Natsuki Subaru lost his life. Arc 1, Chapter 1. This is really bad. Lost and penniless. These few words were all he could think of. Well, penniless wasn't quite right. He did have his wallet in his pocket, and setting aside the fact that he had an abundance of small change and very few notes, it couldn't be denied that he had his assets on him. More than enough to go to the nearest mall and do some shopping and eat some lunch. Even so, he could only be called penniless. Looks like the currency around here is completely different after all. Flipping the rare, rigid 10 yen coin he was holding, the youth sighed deeply. He was an unremarkable youth, bearing short black hair and average stature. He had some muscularity, which, combined with his cheap jersey, gave off the air of an athlete. His sharp eyes were his only noteworthy feature, and now even they drooped helplessly. The banality of his appearance was such that one could instantly lose him in a crowd. However, the gazes directed at him were those of wonder and incomprehension, as though they were looking at something strange. Obviously, there wasn't a single person sporting black hair or a jersey among those looking at him. Their hair varied extensively: blonde, white, brown, green, blue, and so on. Furthermore, their outfits were armor, dancers' clothes, monotone robes, and more, which possessed a certain vibe. The youth could only cross his arms in comprehension as their brazen glances washed over him. So, basically, it's like that, huh? Snapping his fingers, he pointed at those who were staring at him. Seems I've been summoned to another world. Before his eyes were a carriage drawn by a massive lizard-like being. Natsuki Subaru was born in Heisei-era Japan's pressure-free education system. He had lived 17 years, and to describe his life would take 17 years. Setting that aside, his present situation could be simply described as high school third-year shut-in. Or, in more detailed terms, a piece of trash who disregards everything, even his parents, to shut himself in his shell, even with entrance exams right around the corner. On typical weekdays, he would occasionally think getting up now would be a pain, and that became an impetus to cut school. With his absences steadily increasing, before he realized it, he had become an exemplary shut-in, who brought tears to his parents' eyes. He spent his days in sloth, plunging ever deeper into the net with minimal communication. The result being a summons to another world, huh? I don't really get it myself. Reconfirming his surroundings yet again, he heaved his upteenth sigh. He had moved from the street he was on and was presently sitting in a somewhat dim alley. The ground was paved, a rough job compared to modern Japan, but it wasn't bad. Supposing this is a parallel world fantasy, I guess this must be a standard medieval civilization. I didn't see any machinery, and they build with stone and wood. He thought back to the sights he'd seen on his way to the alley, and organized the information in his head. He would frequently let his imagination run wild. As a result, he was more than prepared for his present situation. First, calmly analyze that time period's culture and its differences with Japan. Ascertain any differences in the laws of physics and possibility of contact with humanoid organisms. These were his priorities. Upon realizing he'd been summoned, the first thing Subaru did was attempt to negotiate with a grocer, having attempted to purchase the apples with his Japanese yen. He was promptly denied. It would seem that this world used gold, silver, and copper coins as its currency. The inherent value of currency in this world was easy to understand, certainly befitting a parallel world fantasy. Well, I suppose there would be mixed metal fakes. Something like a 500 won coin would probably degrade, though. Probably heavy to carry around, he thought, as another lizard-drawn carriage passed through the street. This produced a giant cloud of dust, and yet the townsfolk paid it no mind, as though they were completely used to this. Even so, they don't seem nearly as common as cars were. Come to think of it, I haven't seen any dogs or cats around here. The lizards drawing the carriages appeared considerably larger than horses. Their body mass seemed consistent relative to their proportions, but it was certainly worrying to see reptiles of that size. They're commonplace, huh? Both lizards and humanoids? Then, the final piece he had to confirm, the unique looks of this world's humans. They possessed very colorful hair, but one could easily obtain any hair color with dye. For a parallel world fantasy, that was nothing extraordinary. Instead, Subaru focused on their animal ears. At a cursory glance, he spotted dog ears, cat ears, perhaps even bunny ears, and he may have even caught sight of a lizard man-like being. There were also those who looked no different from Subaru, which led him to conclude, the genre is parallel world fantasy. The culture is that of a typical medieval civilization. Demi-humans are common, so battle and adventure might be common as well. The animals show minor changes, but they basically serve their functions. Is that how it is? Having deduced that, Subaru exhaled a long breath that wasn't quite a sigh. Having spoken of the circumstances he'd ended up in, he knit his brows at the seemingly convenient development. If things proceeded according to his fantasies, he'd freely use his modern knowledge to obtain incredible power. However, this world was slightly different than he had planned for. I'd run perfect simulations of the Sengoku area. If I ended up there, I'd have seized the country from Nobunaga. When it came to parallel world fantasies, at best, his knowledge amounted to gunpowder production, and even that was meaningless considering this world's technology level, parallel world fantasy, generally came with magic. If that were the case, it would probably make gunpowder little more than fireworks. Well, there's also cliches where magic isn't the end-all be-all. If I ever get the opportunity to contribute to the advancement of science, I'll do my best to. First, my current problem. He had no clue how or why he'd been summoned here. He clearly remembered what he was doing prior to the summoning. He had just gone out for the first time in a long while to buy some cup ramen at the convenience store and was about to return home. He didn't want to use his bicycle, so he went on foot. Midway, he looked up at the night sky and thought, it's almost a full moon tonight, huh? And then he looked down and blinked. It was noon. Night to noon in an instant. He immediately realized something was off, but that was it. He'd calmed down now, but immediately after the summoning, his panic was such that could be told of for generations to come. As he muttered this, he once again checked his belongings in a parallel world fantasy. Starting gear was even more important than he'd imagined. He'd need everything he had, however little it was. First, his cell phone, with a dying battery. His wallet, containing many video rental membership cards. The ramen he bought at the convenience store, shoyo tonkutsu. Some snacks, corn pottage flavored, his beloved gray jersey, unwashed, worn-out sneakers of 2 years, and some other things. It seemed only his snacks would prove useful, and only to fill his belly. The situation is hopeless, and of course, I don't know the source. I don't even have any memories of passing through a mirror or hopping into a pond. And most importantly, where's the beauty who summoned me? In truth, Subaru could no longer escape reality, now that he'd assessed his situation, and he could only hang his head in despair. Oh, give me a break already! What on earth am I supposed to do here? Subaru was already at his limit as he muttered complaints. He earnestly wanted to go back. Fantasy was best left in the realm of fantasy. It was fun to imagine arriving in another world to obtain incredible power, but to actually end up in such a situation, what could he really do? For now, what's important is survival, but with my level 1 communication ability, is that enough? Aside from his family, he only really spoke to store clerks. He'd lived this lifestyle for almost a year now, and had long forgotten how to navigate social interactions. Even though I can type at speaking speed online, I don't think it's going to do me any good here. Subaru moved his fingers nervously as he contemplated his future in despair. However, his expression changed when he heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the alley. He looked up to see 3 men blocking his exit. Hello everyone, Old Drunkie here. That was Chapter 0 and Arc 1, Chapter 1 of ReZero. If you like it and want me to do more, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, tell all your friends, especially if they like anime, manga, or light novels, and you can also check me out on Patreon. If you like audiobooks, check out some of my original work as well as some of my public domain stuff and the stuff I've read off Reddit. And of course, please support the original author, Tapi Negatsuki, assuming I'm saying that correctly. With all that being said, please share this, comment, subscribe, because this is something I haven't really done before, and if I don't get support on it, I really won't see a reason to keep doing it when I could be recording my original work. But, with all that being said, thank you guys. Here's to you.